Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to another edition of the Sunday School Review. This week's Sunday School lesson is entitled The Faith of Ruth, and it's taken from the first chapter of Ruth, verses 6 through 16, and 6 through 18, and also verse 22 of the first chapter of Ruth. Now, the book of Ruth, the author is unknown, okay? But this story, the story of Ruth, is a story of God's grace. It's God's grace in difficult circumstances. Now, this story takes place during the time of the judges. And let's, as I said, the lesson starts at verse 66. But let's read a couple of verses there in the first chapter, the very first verse. Now it says, "Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled, that there was a famine in the land." So there was a famine in Judah. Now, during that time, the famine was God's judgment. God was judging Judah for its sins. They were disobedient. There was idol worship. It was idolatry going on, and it was violence. So this was during the dark days for Israel. So there was a famine in the land because God was bringing judgment upon Judah. Let's finish up with 1. I started at verse 1. Now let's continue. "And a certain man named Belimelech, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab." Belimelech, this was the husband of Naomi. And Naomi, Oprah, and Ruth are the 3 characters in this lesson. That is Naomi and her 2 daughters-in-law, Oprah and Ruth. Okay, so this was Naomi's husband. Went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife, that is Naomi, and his 2 sons. They're going to name them in the next verse. So he decided, this Jew, he was a Jew, he decided to escape God's judgment. So he took his family, his wife and 2 sons, and he moved to Moab. Now, Moab was a pagan society. It was a pagan society. So now let's know this was outside of the will of God. So he was trying to circumvent the judgment that God brought on them. There was a famine, okay? Now, verse 2 gives the name. The name of the man was Elimelech, like I said. The name of his wife was Naomi. The name of his 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. So Naomi, the wife, and the 2 sons, Chilion and Mahlon, Ephraimites of Bethlehem of Judea. That's where they were from. That was their domicile. "And they came to the country of Moab and continued there." This was a pagan society. As I said, this was outside of the will of God. This was outside of the will of God. Now, verse 3 said, "And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died." The first one to die was Naomi's husband. And verse 3, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, and she was left with her 2 sons. We read Mahlon and Chilion in verse 2. Okay, her husband died, she left with her 2 sons. Verse 4, "And they took their wives of the women of Moab." Now this again was against the custom. They were not to take outside wives. They were not, that was against the rules. What they did. The name of one was Oprah, and the name of the other was Ruth, and they dwelled there about 10 years. So they were there about 10 years. Now, obviously, this is after the husband died, There's Naomi's husband, and Mahlon and Chilion, that is the two sons. This is verse 5. Died also, both of them. Both of the two sons died. So Naomi's husband died, and the two sons, which they had already married Moabite women, which was a no-no. They had done that. We read 5, and Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. So, and the woman was left of her two sons and her husband. Okay, the two sons and the husband. So it was 3 widows, basically. Okay, that's why our lesson picks up in verse 6. Verse 6, then she rose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab, how the Lord had visited the people and given them bread. So, okay, well, let's tell you, the first outline is going back home, and that's verse 6 through 10, and then we just read 6. Okay, so they're there, the 3 widows are there in Moab. So she hears that the people in Judah are doing better. In other words, the famine have broken. The famine is over. Okay, so Naomi hears that news that they're doing better in Judah. So she heads back home. Okay, let's go to verse 7. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-laws with her, and they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. Okay, so initially, all 3 left. Naomi and the 2 daughters-in-law, they started the journey. As verse 7 said, they started the journey. And verse 8, where Naomi turns to her daughters-in-law and said, and Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, go, each to her mother's house. In other words, go to your mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. That is your dead husband, because each of the daughter-in-law's husband died. That is Oprah and Ruth husband died, as well as Naomi's husband. So as they were going back to, Naomi was going back to Judah because she heard things were better there. So this is the first time that she tries to encourage her daughters-in-law to go to their people, because it was very difficult for widows to survive. I mean, it's not like today. It was very difficult for widows to survive. So basically she's saying, your best option here, as in my mind, is to return to your family. That is, Oprah, you go to your family, and Ruth, you go to your family. Okay, that's the first time she tries to encourage them to go. Verse 9, the Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. Okay, this basically what she's saying is, perhaps you're young enough, go and find a husband, find your husband, because as I said, it was difficult for a female in that society to survive. Now, let's go to verse 10. This is the last verse in the first outline. And they said unto her, surely we will return with thee unto thy people. That is, both of them. That is, Oprah and Ruth said, okay, we're going to go with you. That's the first time. Now, the second outline starts at verse 11. Go to verse 15. And the title of that outline is, My Name is Bitter. Okay, verses 11 through 15 of the first chapter of Ruth. And Naomi said, turn again, my daughters. So this is the second time that she encourages them to return to your people, return to your people. Why will you go with me? This is what she asked. Why will you go with me? Are there any more sons in my womb that they may be your husband? And let's read 12. Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should also bear son. So it was a type of responsibility. I think it's called the Levirate pledge, where if the son dies, the other son was responsible for his brother's widow. So that was the idea, is that, but in this case, she had two sons, they both dead, and she is, in verse 12 lays it out. I'm too old to have another son, and even if she said, even if I did, are you going to wait that long? I understand the Levirate pledge is that the son, that brother's son, will take care of the deceased son's wife, a widow. I understand that, but I don't have any more sons, and I'm too old to have any. So again, this is the second time, verse 12, turn again, my daughters. This is the second time she is pleading with her daughters-in-law to return to your people, because I don't have any more sons, and I'm old, and chances if I did have a son, you're not going to wait for that. That's verse 12. Let's go to verse 13. Would you, and this is what the point about would you wait? Would you tarry for them till they were grown? So that's what she said in 12. If I had a son tonight, are you going to wait till they get grown? You're not going to marry a baby. You can't marry a baby. Even if I did have a son, are you going to wait until they get grown? No. Okay, that's not feasible, is what she's alleging. Okay, would you stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieved me too much for your sake that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. Now, we know the end of the story, that the Lord has not turned against her. But this is what she's alleging, because these are difficult circumstances. I've been dealt a very difficult hand. And it's my understanding, it's my belief that the Lord has turned against me. Basically, the Lord has turned his back on me. That's what she's saying in this verse here. That's why this outline is called, my name is bitter. The Lord has turned against me, as she said in verse 13. Verse 14, and they lifted up their voice and wept again, and Oprah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave to her. So after this, I believe this is the third time, after this time, Oprah finally said, okay, I'm gonna go back home. So Oprah goes back to her people, but not Ruth. And that's why this is the story of Ruth, not the story of Oprah and Ruth. Is the story of Ruth, and is the faith of Ruth. Okay, and we're gonna get there. So Ruth does not turn back after the second or third insists that you guys should go back. You should turn and go back to your people. Okay, and 15 says, and she said, behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people. In other words, Oprah is gone back. You see Oprah, she went back. She's gone back to her people. They all, both of them said they would go as we went through it. Both of them said they would go. But after the second or third time insisting that they go back, Oprah decides to go back. So 15 says she's going to go back and to her people and her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. In other words, you should go back too. Okay. Now, that's the conclusion of the second outline. My name is bitter. So she, as I said, Naomi is surmising that the Lord is going out against me, as she said in 13. The Lord has turned his back on me. Okay, the Lord is turning his back on me. Now, the third outline is a determined faith. That's verses 16 through 18 and verse 22. Okay, let's read 16. And Ruth said, entreat me not to leave thee or to return from following after thee, for whether thou go, I will go. Whether thou lodge, I will lodge, and thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God. Now, this is Ruth's pledge to Oprah, that pledge or vow to Oprah, that in showing her faith, she embraced by faith. This is where faith comes. She embraced by faith the God of Israel. She said, thy people will be my people, and thy God, that is the God of Israel, will be my God. So Naomi, Ruth did not know what would happen, the outcome. They was in a hopeless situation, but we know the story of Ruth, how it turns out in the end. We're not gonna get there today because this lesson is just covering the first chapter. But you all know the story of Ruth, okay? But they were facing a hopeless situation, and by faith, they didn't know. Naomi didn't know the outcome. Neither did Ruth know the outcome. But she made this pledge that wherever you go, I will go. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Whatever hand we will be dealt, I'm going to have faith and trust in the God of Israel. That's the pledge that she makes, that is Ruth makes in verse 17. Okay, verse 18 said, when she saw that she was steadfast, that is Naomi, when she saw that she was steadfast to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. In other words, after 3 times of pleading with them to turn back, and Ruth made this pledge that she would embrace the God of Israel by faith. Naomi left her alone. So, okay, well, let's go. Okay, now that's verse 18. Now the last verse is verse 22. So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabites, her daughter-in-law with her, which returned out of the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of the barley harvest. Now, that's where really the next story takes up, because we're not gonna go into that. But we know that the story of Ruth is about the fact that God will provide. And we know how through Ruth, Naomi was provided for, as well as Ruth. And even though the situation was hopeless, the question is, under that situation, what would you do? In other words, Ruth pledged to trust in the God of Israel. And that's faith in action. She didn't know, well, when I get over here, things gonna be better. No, we don't know what's gonna happen. But we know the story turned out wonderful because Ruth, which, as I said, Ruth was not a Jew. Ruth was a Moabite. But Ruth ended up in the ancestry of both David and Jesus. Ruth was the great grandmother of David. So the problem, because of her faith, she became an heir of God's salvation. So this story lets us know that you can become an heir of God's salvation based on if you have faith. If you have faith that God will provide. And Ruth, as I said, not a Jew, is part of the ancestry of David, his great-grandmother, and she's part of the ancestry of Jesus because of her faith and her mother-in-law, Naomi, and the faith that she had in God. This is an example of faith in action, not knowing the outcome. But as I said, we all know the outcome of the story of Ruth. But this is faith in action, not knowing. But God did provide for both Naomi and Ruth through Naomi through Ruth, as the story goes. But the subject is the faith of Ruth. And when the tables are turned against you, or as they say, when your back is against the wall, what are you going to do? Are you going to turn back? Are you going to continue to trust and have faith in God? And that's what this story represents. The fact that Naomi, Ruth, made this pledge that I will embrace the God of Israel. And the God of Israel did not let them down. God provided for them. And that's our lesson today, the faith of Ruth. And as I said, we should have that faith when in difficult circumstances, because as we read the story, and Naomi she said it in a lesson, that the Lord is going out against me. That wasn't true. God hadn't went out against her, but that was a difficult situation. And if you are a Christian, and this is another point that we can glean from this lesson, if you are a Christian, you're going to face some difficult days ahead. And the question is, when you face those difficult circumstances, what are you going to do? Are you going to abandon God? Or are you going to continue to trust and have faith in God? We'd like to thank you for watching. We ask you to join us next week for another edition to the Sunday School Review. Thank you.